Hello, this is Mary Beth Jacobs, and I'm going to show you how to switch between knit and purl stitches within a row so that we don't have holes or distortions. This is a technique that you would use for stitch patterns such as ribbing, seed stitch, and even things like cables, or if you were going to make a motif with knit and purl stitches like in a Gansey. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my video and show you what I mean. So here I have regular stockinette stitch. On this, I would be knitting all the stitches on my right side row, and then I would be purling all my stitches on my wrong side row. Okay. And so in this knitting, I don't have to switch between doing a knit stitch and a purl stitch within a row. Okay. But I have two examples here of knitting where I would need to be switching between a knit stitch and a purl stitch. This here is a seed stitch, really dense, and we want to make that with no holes or distortions. And then here is a 1x1 rib. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate on these two particular stitch patterns, switching between knits and purls, but this would translate into pretty much any stitch pattern that you will do where you are switching within a single row between a knit stitch and a purl stitch. So the first thing to notice is how my knit and purl stitches are constructed. So here I have on this edge, I have my knit stitches. And whenever you have an edge stitch, they're always going to look a little lopsided because they don't have structure on this side, okay? But if you notice on this knit stitch, my working yarn is going to be coming toward the back, okay? So let me go ahead, and this is a 1x1 rib. And so what that means is that I'm going to be stacking all my knits and my purl stitches. So I'm going to enter from front to back, and I'm going to go ahead and make my knit stitch. And my working yarn is toward the back. Well, now I need to make a purl stitch. But to purl, I need my working yarn in the front. So I have to make a decision on how I get my working yarn from the back to the front. And the way I want to do that is I want to go under the needle. Okay. If I go over the needle, I'm making a stitch called a yarn over, and I'm going to have a hole. Okay. So I want to go always under the needle. So I've gone under the needle and brought my yarn to the front, and I'm going to enter my next stitch from back to front, and I'm going to make my purl stitch. Okay. Now, let me show you this. You see there's a big well there. Okay, and that's because I've had to make my yarn travel under the needle so I could make that purl stitch. So I'm going to just kind of give it a little gentle tug to close up that well. I've just made my purl stitch, and my working yarn is oriented to the front. But now I need to make a knit stitch, and I have to get my yarn toward the back. And again, I have to make a decision on how do I get my yarn back there, okay? And I'm going to, again, go under my right-hand needle. If I go over it, I'm making another stitch called a yarn over, and I'm going to have a hole plus an extra stitch. So I don't want either of those things. So I'm going to go under the right-hand needle. And now I'm going to enter from front to back. I'm going to catch my yarn and make my knit stitch. And again, you can see here I've got a bit of a well there. And that's because I had to move my working yarn from front to back. And so I'm just going to kind of give it a little snug. Okay. Again, my working yarn is to the back, and I'm going to make a purl. So I need that working yarn to get to the front. And I'm going to go under my right-hand needle and bring it forward. And then I'm going to enter back to front, around to make my purl. And again, I have A little bit of a wells, not quite as bad, but I'm just going to give it a little gentle. Now, if you notice when I did it, I was very gentle. I wasn't strangling it, and you can see the yarn that's on top of the needle is plump. It's not, it doesn't have a lot of slack, but it's also not pulled so tight that you can't see the ply. Okay. Again, my working yarn's to the front. I need to get it to the back, and so I'm going to go under my right hand needle. I'm going to enter front to back, catch my yarn, pull it through for my knit stitch. And again, I have a little bit of well, so I'm going to just snug it up a little bit. So there are some that will say, oh, just snug after you do your knit stitches. And that's well and good. But for me, I tend to make a little bit of slack for both. So I just snug it up. So I'm going to go under my needle now, bring it to the front, enter from front, back to front, make my purl stitch. You can see I have a little bit of a well, so I'm just going to give it a little snug. And again, I want to make a knit stitch, so I have to get my working yarn to the back. I'm going to go under the right hand needle, enter my stitch from front to back, catch it to make my knit stitch, and then I'm going to give it a gentle little snug. So you can see it's coming out fairly nicely. Okay, I'm going to switch hands so that you can see what this looks like if you're a thrower. It's the same exact thing. It's just it might look a little different to you. So my working yarn is to the back, and I'm going to do a purl. So I need to bring it under the needle to the front. I'm going to enter from back to front, make my purl stitch, and then I'm going to snug. My next stitch is a knit stitch. So I'm going to pull that under my right hand needle. I'm going to go ahead and make my knit stitch. Pull through. And then I'm just going to tension it up. I'm at the back because it's a knit, and I need to go under my right hand needle. I'm going to make my purl. And then I'm going to give it a little tension. I'm going to go under to the back, make my knit. Pull through. I'm just going to give it a little bit of tension. Under the needle. Oops, flip that around and pull it through. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Continental because that is my little bit faster way to do this. So I'm back here and I've got a purl stitch and I need to bring my yarn under the needle to the back. I'm going to knit, catch it, snug her up, purl, snug it up. You can see I'm starting to just naturally pull my working yarn back, right? I'm going to knit, snug it up, and you can see as I'm snugging it up, I'm already getting my working yarn in place. I'm going under the needle. The key is you want to remember to go under the right hand needle. And you can see as I'm snugging it up into the direction that I need it to go into for my next stitch. It's almost like the motion to get the yarn into the correct position becomes also the snugging up. Okay. And I'm going to snug it up toward the back, make my knit stitch. Okay, so there we go. Here's a nice row of knitting knits and purls within the same row. Again, the working yarn is always coming under the needle. You can see I don't have any gaps, no holes. And let me see, turn around. and it looks pretty uniform, right side or wrong side. Let's do this same exercise now with a seed stitch. So this is exactly the same motion, except in the rib where I stacked all my knit stitches and stacked all my purl stitches, in the seed stitch, I'm alternating it. So instead of stacking, I'm going to knit into the purls and purl into the knits, okay? And this fabric should look really dense and tight with no holes. So here I have a purl stitch. So I've already got my working yarn to the back. So let me show you what that looks like. So this isn't confusing for this first one. For this one, I have to go toward the outside, right? Because there's really, I can't go inside. I can't, so I have to go around to the outside to get my working yarn to the back. I'm going to go ahead and knit into that first stitch. Pull my yarn through. I'm going to snug it, and then I have to purl that one because you see it's a knit stitch. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, and I'm going to purl, enter back to front, pull through, and I need to now, see there's a purl stitch, it's right up against the needle, so that's my purl bump. I'm going to pull it to the back, and I'm going to knit this one. My working yarn is in the back. My next stitch is a knit stitch, so I'm going to purl into that one. So now I have to bring my yarn under the needle and purl. So if you kind of watch, I'm actually tensioning with all these maneuvers. So my working yarn's in the front, so I tension there. I'm bringing it to the back. I'm tensioning it a little bit there. I'm going to enter front to back. And if you see, I'm kind of aggressive. I'm pulling this open, so I'm tensioning the row below. My working yarn is settled to the back. I'm going to pull it to the front and snug it as I'm doing that. I'm going to purl my next stitch. I'm going to snug my yarn toward the back. And I'm going to knit. My working yarn's to the back, but I need to purl that guy. So let me bring it forward, and I'm going to purl. I'm going to snug my yarn and bring it to under the needle to the back and knit. Snug my yarn, bring it under the needle to the front and purl. Snug my yarn, bring it under the needle to the back to knit. And then I'm going to snug my yarn and bring it to the front to purl. Okay. So I'll turn it and I'll do it throwing, tensioning with my right hand. So again, as you can see, if I pull down here, right up against the needle, those are the purl bumps. And then or right up against the needle are the V's, which are the knit stitches. And I'm going to be doing the opposite. Okay, so this first one here is a knit stitch, so I am going to purl it. So I'm going to enter from back to front. I'm going to have my working yarn to the front, and I'm going to purl. Okay, that's a purl stitch, so I have to knit it. So now I'm going to take my working yarn under my right hand needle to the back. I'll give it a little snug, and I'm going to go ahead and knit, enter from front to back and knit that next stitch. My working yarn's in the back, but now I have to purl. So under my needle, my right hand needle, I'm going to enter from back to front. I'm going to give it a little snug because I know I could feel I didn't get that worked out. There's my purl. And now I need to knit, so it's going to go under my needle to the back. I'm going to knit, snug her up, under my needle to the front. I'm going to purl. You can see when I do my purls, Sometimes they're a little bigger for me, the little loops. To the back and knit. Now under the needle to the front to purl. So you see all this switching under the needle. There's a lot of opportunity to do weird stuff. Um, you can accidentally make the yarn over where you go over the needle, making an extra stitch and then a big hole. But there's also, with all this switching, a lot of opportunity to have tension issues. For my hands, particularly, I want to make more slack than I need. So I have to just conscientiously do a little snug up so that it goes away. Sometimes if I'm on a later row and I recognize that I had a bit of a part where maybe I missed. Maybe I missed snugging up or I didn't do it enough or whatever. What I'll do is I'll actually kind of work it through the next stitches. So say I noticed I had some unevenness in my prior row. I'd open this up a little bit further and try to work it down the row a little bit, spread the wealth. And then I'd kind of open this one up a little more and spread it through. Okay. So here we go. We did one row. Throwing English style. And then the first row we did was continental. So always remember to go under your needle. Always remember to snug up. And you want to be able to have a nice dense fabric for seed stitch. And then for your rib, you want to be able to follow your eye along a column and it be fairly uniform. So hopefully that helps with any issues with switching between a knit and a purl within a single row.